Morning and welcome to Kitty Talks. We share inspirational life stories that empower you to create yours. Today I have with me Fabienne Fredrickson. Hello, Fabienne.
Hi, so great to be with you.
All the way from Paris.
Yes. Not too far either.
Yeah, just over the water. For those of you that don't know, Fabienne is the founder of an organization called Boldheart. She's going to tell us a lot more about that. But Boldheart offers developmental courses for individuals and business owners to help them take their lives to the next level. So we're going to hear all about Boldheart today, and we're going to hear all about Fabienne's story about how she has tuned in and followed her passion and purpose. So Fabienne, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we had a chat beforehand, so I know what's coming is really inspirational for people listening. So
hold on to your socks.
Yeah, hold on to your transformational socks because you're going to hear an amazing story this morning. But I'd love for it if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit more about the work you're doing in the world.
Sure, happy to. Well, Boldheart is the culmination of close to 20 years of working with thousands and thousands of individuals around the world. I started off teaching people client attraction. I'm known around the world for the client attraction system. And as I started working with more and more people and people all over the world, I noticed that there were two types of people, essentially. There are people who would take this proven system and apply it and get all of the clients that they could ever need and eventually get to 7 figures, $1 million business, because I was based in the US. And those who would get the very same information, have the very same sort of business, and question the advice, question the methods, not do them, procrastinate, talk themselves out of it, and essentially not get the results. Or they would get results because the stuff worked, but they wouldn't get the same kind of exponential results. And that was me in the beginning. I have this long story that I tell. I'm going to spare you the long story, but the 3 a.m. I don't have enough client sweats at the beginning of my business in 1999. And I realized that a lot of it was in my mindset. Why didn't I have enough clients? Because I didn't believe in myself. Granted, I didn't know what I was doing in marketing, but there was this very subtle, under the surface, not believing in myself and not believing that I could do it. The not so subtle self-doubt. And if we're being honest, criticism. And it's not until I started doing a lot of personal growth and development work and getting out of my own way and changing my mindset and changing my beliefs and actually developing my faith and my spirituality. I'm not religious. I know a lot of people are. I have my own way of connecting with the divine. It's not until I did the personal growth and the spiritual development that I started thinking a lot bigger and getting out of my comfort zone, taking risks, saying yes to opportunities I would never, ever, ever have said yes to in the past, and believing in myself so much that I actually created big results and eventually grew my business 534% over a period of 3 years, made the Inc. magazine list of America's fastest growing companies and hit the $1 million mark and then multiplied that since. And the reason I share this is not because I'm a number dropper or anything like that, but it's to show the transformation of what's possible from someone who, if I'm being honest, had not such high self-esteem to really working on self-worth, self-value, self-honoring, self-esteem, and what that does to someone in my case, and then I've rolled this out for thousands of my clients since, and they get to seven figures, and they get to multiple six figures, and they then begin to have relationships that honor them, etc. And so after a while, this is a really long answer to your short question, Kitty, but after a while, I realized that it's not just about the marketing. It's not just about the how-to. If on the inside we don't have a self-image, we don't have self-esteem or self-worth, it's really difficult to have the relationship that we want. It's really difficult to have the income that we want, the career, the parenting, the where we live. Really, it's difficult to take bold steps. So I realized that client attraction was an umbrella that was much too small for what I'm here to do in the world. We rebranded boldheart.com. We still do. The majority of our business now is still professional development, teaching people how to get from 5 figures to 6 figures, and then from 6 figures to 7 figures and gain their life back. And now there's Boldheart Self, which we plan on having be gangbusters. I believe that the Boldheart Self curriculum about the self-esteem should be required curriculum for virtually all humans, especially women.
Yeah. And would you say, because I truly believe that what we like, obviously you're teaching that stuff now, so you're taking individuals, you're taking companies, you're taking them through that process. And would you say that your passion and purpose has been born out of your own journey about what you needed to learn? Now you can teach other people.
Well, of course, it's heal or heal thyself first, right? And the other concept is, teach what you need to learn most. And so what I've developed this belief about, so I'm essentially a coach, a mentor, or a consultant, if you will. And what I've noticed in our industry, my industry, over the years, is there are people on stage or in classes who talk a really good game. But then when you find out what they're like behind the stage, you realize that there's a big imposter syndrome, the fraud factor that is rampant. And I've always been allergic to that. So my approach to doing this is instead of walking my talk, I flip it around and I talk my walk, which means that I've either walked it and figured out how to walk that path, and then I teach how I walked it, or I say, I'm in the trenches with you. I may be a couple steps ahead of you, but let's roll up our sleeves and do it together. And so absolutely, I'm still learning. I'm a work in progress. I love the journey of transformation. I love the journey of evolution and enlightenment and healing. It is the thing that wakes me up at night. It's the thing I would do for free all day long.
Excellent. And obviously people listening are tuning in because they are on the self-discovery transformation. They're discovering their passion and purpose by listening to our interviews. So I'd love for you to take us through a bit about your journey. So take us through how you tuned in, really, how you refined what you're here to do. So tell us kind of how it all started.
Well, my path to figuring out my life's purpose it's we say there are many roads that lead to Rome. That's exactly what's happened for me. I remember going to an event about life direction and life purpose, and the series of questions that were asked were always about, what is it that you're passionate about? What is it that you would do all day long? What is it that inspires you? What are the moments during your life that you felt the most present, alive, on purpose, connected to the divine? And I always, I ask myself those questions, and now I teach this, which is, if you want to discover your life's purpose, it's right here under your nose. The whispers have been coming to you 10,000 times in your lifetime already, but you discount it. And you think it's because it comes so easily to you that it can't be something that somebody would pay for, or it can't be something that's valuable, because you take it for granted. And so in my own journey, I realized that my very first business was actually not client attraction. It was a nutrition business.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember attending the Institute for Integrative Nutrition in New York, and I'm teaching people about brown rice and how to not make it stick to the pan, and how to make kale taste good, and, 5 ways to make tofu palatable. And I love tofu, but at the time, that's, teaching New Yorkers how to do that. I realized that beyond the brown rice, the kale, and the tofu, the things that were keeping my clients stuck in their patterns of eating or their relationship was how they felt about themselves. If they felt, if they had a high sense of self-worth, they would treat themselves nicely with food, meaning they wouldn't abuse themselves with food. Um, and instead of focusing after a while, so yes, I taught them the basics of the food, but then we had to go under the surface and look at, let's look at your relationships. Let's look at your work. Let's look at any your beliefs and fears and life. And what I noticed is those things were what were driving the food rather than the food driving the food.
Sure.
And it's in working with people in their personal growth around changing their self-talk and their negative beliefs and healing. Some of my favorite moments of my life in that period of my time were helping a man come out of the closet to his parents. Very Latino family, very prideful father. But he and I remember this. I'll never forget this. We're supposed to be talking about food and portions, and we're talking about coming out. And we both had tears in our eyes. And I knew in that moment that this was part of my purpose, to help people express the fullest version of themselves, the most authentic, vulnerable version of themselves in the biggest possible way in the world. There's another woman who came to me again, and it was for the nutrition, and we're supposed to be talking about, whatever, carrots. and then I remember this other woman who came to me for nutrition when I was doing holistic nutrition. Instead of talking about carrots, we ended up going into this subject of she being in an abusive relationship, very controlling man. She was such a beautiful woman on the inside and out, but she was allowing people to trespass her. She had no boundaries. And instead of working on the food, we worked on her boundaries, we worked on her self-worth, we worked on everything. And she ended up leaving this abusive man, getting out of her job, toxic job. She was, accepting these ways that people were treating her that were not how I see the divine would want her to be treated. And she ended up getting a great job, increasing her salary. And I remember again in that moment feeling on purpose, here on purpose, with a purpose, for a purpose. And the more I realized about life purpose is it's right under your nose. I look at my bookshelf.
It made you feel really, well, I'm just observing you, and by the sounds of things, it made you feel really alive, what you were doing with your clients effectively.
In telling you the story right now, my throat closed up, and I felt, I'm feeling it now, such a sense of joy and absolute, I don't know how to say, exaltation, an ecstatic feeling of feeling connected to all that is. Not feeling alone, not feeling less than, nothing, but truly connected. There is no greater joy.
And I can feel it. I can feel it too.
I feel it. Yeah. And so those two things weren't just random. In fact, now I'm known. I have this viral quote that's going around all over the world. I had celebrities repost it, and it's the thing that I've been saying for years is the things you are passionate about are not random, they are your calling.
Beautiful.
The things you are passionate about are not random, they are your calling. And so I started looking at all of the times in my life where I felt that feeling of connectedness and being on purpose, and they were all had to do with self-worth and self-esteem. They all had to do with being a catalyst in someone's life for them to become the fullest expression of who they really were. And then I looked at my bookshelf. Still today, here in Paris and in my home in the US, I am a voracious reader. My books are sorted into 3 categories. Well, there's a 4th, but it's personal growth, spiritual development. So personal growth and healing, spiritual development, and business. And then there's cooking and lifestyle, but that stays in the kitchen. And if you look, so I want to say to those who are watching us today, if you've ever wondered, what is my purpose? It's right under your nose. It's the times that you felt so ecstatic on a like visceral level, deep, deep sense of gratitude for who you are in the world and what you're here to do. It's by looking at the things that you are passionate about. What is it that you read vertically, meaning a category that you read vertically, and who do you look up to? So for me, I look up to Oprah Winfrey. I've always said she's my best friend. She doesn't know it yet.
She will be my best friend.
I look up to people like Tony Robbins because of the sheer numbers of millions of people that he's positively affected in the world, and the list continues. And they all have to do with personal growth, transformation, spiritual development, vulnerability, authenticity, being bolder, really taking up more space in life. And
so you were doing this coaching, obviously, but more on the nutrition side, and then obviously in the beginning, and then you started to see the impact that it had on people's personal lives and how they needed, like you said, to tune into their self-esteem and their authentic version of themselves. So how did that transition then into what was the next part of the journey for you?
So after a year of teaching the nutrition, what I noticed is I'm a very strategic thinker in terms of marketing and advertising. And I ended up within a very short period of time going from barely any clients to having a full practice, bursting at capacity. And my nutrition clients and my nutrition colleagues, those who had gone to school with me, said, how did you go from barely going back to the corporate world because you didn't have enough clients and the credit card companies were calling to having a full practice? Can you teach me? And I said, no, I don't teach marketing, and teach nutrition. And you don't want to learn, you don't want to learn from me. They said, yes, I will join your nutrition program called Natural Transformations at the time. I would like to become a Natural Transformations client of yours, but I want you to not talk to me about that stuff. I want you to tell me how to market. How did you get clients? And the door of opportunity, Kitty, just kept knocking. People kept saying, I hear that you filled your practice to capacity. Can you teach me? So this chiropractor, this naturopath, this yoga practitioner, Pilates, other nutritionists. So I listened to the universe. At that point, to tell you the truth, as always, I got bored teaching people about the food. It's incredibly important. I value nutrition and all the healers and nutritionists, but it wasn't for me. There was this thing about playing a bigger game, about doing the thing that you weren't willing to do before. And I opened up clientattraction.com and started teaching people my marketing techniques along with playing a bigger game, working on their mindset, the law of attraction, metaphysics, personal development, etc. So at first it was the nutrition with this development thing, which transitioned to marketing with the development thing. And eventually, it became teaching you how to get to 7 figures boldly. The theme that runs through it is becoming bolder. Following your heart, not to sound cheesy because the name of the company is Boldheart, but there's a reason it's called that. It's being willing to roar through life, not listen necessarily to what society tells you about staying small and settling and letting other people tell you how you should act in the world, especially as a woman. And in that space of taking up more room and doing things that you were previously unwilling to do, and risking, that is how you create big results in whatever area of your life. So that was the transition into client attraction. And eventually, all of the systems are there. We have the tracks, the growth track that teaches you how to get clients, and the leverage track teaches you how to get to 1 million. But in the end, again, it's about being bolder. It's about really aligning with your business, with your life's purpose. It's about believing in yourself, tackling your fears, reframing your beliefs, looking at your procrastination, all of these things.
And it's interesting how you describe that it was almost presented to you. You just had to see it, in the sense of people were coming to you, asking you specifically for advice in a certain area. And the fact you were open, you could see where that was taking you. I think that's another important point.
The key is, at first I wasn't open.
Yeah.
People would say to me, I want you to teach me this. And I'd say, I don't teach that.
Yeah.
I teach nutrition. I don't teach marketing. And then what's happened over the last 3 years is that clients who've been with me in the business program say, I want to learn how to work on myself. And I said to them the exact same thing. I said, I don't teach that. I teach marketing. I teach business growth. They said, I want you to teach me how you got from the depths of self-esteem, from your abusive relationships, from your lack of money. How did you get to being confident, to speaking in front of 7,000 people and then turning around and doing it the next week and not getting nervous? I remember at that talk, actually, there's a young woman who came to me and she said, how did you get to be so confident? And I just want to make it clear. I'm not talking about arrogance or conceit. She said, how did you get to be so confident and happy in who you are? And I said, I said in my head, I said, I don't teach that, but I listened for the signs again and again and again. It keeps showing up. And what I've learned from that, and this was before I had changed my business to Boldheart, people want to know from me how to be confident, how to stand up for themselves, how to set boundaries, how to have higher standards of what they will accept and not accept in their life. They want to know how to be confident on stage, in their relationships, about their body and all that. And so the same thing happened again. But I don't teach that. All right. Do you want it? I'll give it to you.
And you touched on something earlier, which I'd like to kind of dig deeper on, if it's okay, because I think it could help, a lot of people listening. So I know in your past, you've had relationships where you describe them as, they're not the healthiest of relationships from a domestic violence perspective. So I'd love to know a little bit about that journey and that story, because I think it could help a lot of people who are listening. God forbid that anyone's going through that at the moment, but how did you take yourself from that place to where you are now?
Well, I think it's important to look at where it comes from.
Yeah.
I believe, so I wrote a book called Embrace Your Magnificence, and I wish I had it. It's actually on the bookshelf right there. I would read you the very first paragraph, but it's along the line of, imagine that you are holding 2 babies, and they're newborns, and they're from 2 totally different cultures, and they may even have different color skin. One might have 1 leg, one might have 2, but they're 2 babies. And if you look into their eyes and you look at them gurgling up at you, you ask yourself, which of these babies is worth more love and abundance and hugs and every good thing in the world? And no matter what babies you're holding, you realize that every single infant has equal worth in the world, equal value, equal deserving of love and abundance and showering of all good things. So if we understand that every human being, every little tiny human comes into this world with the same worth, the same God-given, deserving. Where does the disconnect happen? If you talk to a 35 or a 45-year-old woman and she says, I'm not enough, I don't know enough, I'm bad, I don't deserve to have a good relationship, or I'll just settle with what I have because I don't want to rock the boat. Where does the disconnect happen between that infant and the person who feels that the world is not a safe place? Something must have happened. And so I actually just taught this last week at my Boldheart Self 3-day event, and we did a timeline. So I asked them to take a sheet of paper horizontally, and here was their birth, and here was the present moment, and we drew a line, and we looked at all the really highs and lows, and I asked them to tell me a story of their life up until the present moment. And if it was a really, really good feeling thing, it would go above the line, and they would name the event, and they would name, perhaps in one word or two words, what is the meaning that you created for yourself from that moment? And conversely, if it was down, it was, you name the event, and what is the self-talk? What is the meaning that you create for yourself around that? And in looking at their lives, we did a 45-minute exercise, and most people only got to about year 11 or 12 of their lives, maybe 15 years old. So much has happened in that short period of time, but things have happened, things that were said to them, usually from their parents or other members of authority, if you will, with repetition and impact. Experiences gone wrong or experiences gone right, things they witnessed. And if you look at it, a child will, and I'll talk about because you asked me about mine, a child will create a meaning around who they are based on the experiences. They don't look at their parents being wrong. They don't look at the experience should it happen. They look at often something must be wrong with me. So if I looked at, so I was born in France with an American mother and a French father. And I noticed that I never felt like I quite fit in here in Paris. And so I was always the American girl here. And then when I would go to the States on vacation, I was always the French girl. And this sense of never having a culture of my own, never fitting in, really started to gnaw away at me in my early childhood. And some things happened. I was spanked hard when I wasn't good behavior, and I started to think there must be something wrong with me if I can be hit that hard for my behavior, and there was something wrong with me when, etc. And then my parents announced that they were divorced when I was 8, and something must be wrong with me. If they can't get along, something must be wrong with me.
Took it as your fault rather than
my fault, or it's a shameful thing. Nobody else's parents are getting divorced. It's a shameful thing, that transferred shame. And then I'm really letting it all out. My mother kidnapped my sister and me and brought us back to the U.S. My father didn't know. None of my family. I didn't know. No one knew. And that sense of abandonment and that sense of feeling out of control and not feeling safe in the world, and then arriving in the States and having to learn English, being bullied for being different, having to buy the stupid clothes to fit in, to then have, I remember this one incident, I talk about it in my book. I remember in junior high school, so I don't know if you call it the same thing in the UK, but I remember putting my tray down at the lunch table, and every girl, there were probably about 8 girls, as soon as I put my tray down and sat down, they all picked up their tray, moved to another table.
Oh, that's awful.
It was awful. And being on the bus, and when I'd sit down, everybody would get up and move, and I was just the target. I was
Children are horrible sometimes. Because they perceived you as French.
They perceived me as different.
Right.
I didn't look the same. I didn't talk the same. And I had said one day on the bus, I had said, somebody's, there's an American expression. I don't allow my children to say it, but it's a sound of disgust, and it's called ew, EWWWW. And somebody had lice on the bus, or somebody was talking, and I said, "What's wrong with lice? Everybody gets lice. I've had lice, and I thought everybody talked about that, and all the ews. And from that moment, that is one of the defining moments of my life. That started a period of 3 or 4 years when I didn't have friends and I was bullied because I was different, because I didn't know what was acceptable and not to talk about in the US. And so again, if you think about the timeline, right? The bus, the bus incident, the lunchroom incident, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I created a meaning for myself that I'm not lovable, that something's wrong with me, that I'll never fit in, that something's wrong with me, that I'm not safe, that I must control everything because the rug will be pulled out from under me. And this feeling of being flawed, absolutely flawed, and not knowing how I would be able to ever get out of that. And in seeking, and then not having both of my parents, so my dad being in Paris and I'm in the New York, Connecticut area, very far away, I just felt lost. And not having friends, I found friends who weren't necessarily, I got my affection where I could. That makes sense. And it wasn't the highest level of affection. And it's not until, a boyfriend who ended up punching me in the stomach, it's all in my book, punching me in the stomach, and cheating on me with practically every girl in town. And I always took him back, Kitty. The reason I always took him back is I never thought that I deserved more. Now, this is my story. There are worse stories, and there are easier stories. It is mine. And
but it's interesting for people listening, because obviously they might be going through something themselves, and they might be able to hopefully see where that behavior or boundary or lack of boundary is kind of coming from, really.
And what I've discovered in all of these years, and I'll finish off the story, but this is a side note. What I've discovered over all of these years of working with women and men, young and not so young, successful and not successful, there is so much internalized shame. There is so much negative talk that even when somebody's got it all together on the outside, which is what I did to cope, is I had a perfect exterior outside, right? Everything is good. I'm ultra professional, and I'm not going to let you in. I'm not going to let you into my heart because you'll hurt me. All of this stuff. Everyone's carrying around something. And we see that and we think there's only something wrong with me. Everybody else has got it better than we do. And I talk about the comparison monster, how we judge people not equally. We look at our harshest, our shame, our self-talk, us at the worst moments, and we compare that with what we see of somebody else at their best. And that's where the comparison monster can get really ugly, because then it's this cycle of, again, lower worth and lower value of ourselves. So how does one get from moving from one relationship to another, from making poor choices, and failing classes in college, to having So I'll say I have an amazing relationship with my husband. He is, everybody who meets Derek is that, says, nobody doesn't like Derek. I'm a marketer, so I have that tagline for him. Nobody doesn't like Derek. 3 great kids there. Hey, they're not always great in their behavior, and I'm not always a good mother either. But I'm doing what I can, and they're doing what they can. Being able to live with you where you want in a gorgeous apartment here, fabulous home in the US, having hundreds and hundreds of clients, thousands of customers, 7 figures, etc. How do you do that?
Yeah, exactly. How do you do that?
You start looking at what is it that took you to believing that you were less than, that you were inadequate, that something's wrong with you, and you begin unraveling those.
Right.
You start to reframe and heal. First, it's pinpointing and actually getting clear about the skeletons in the closet. So it doesn't have to hurt, but you just need to work on it.
So it sounds like a really good exercise that our listeners can do, the timeline exercise that you just described.
Start with the timeline.
Timeline exercise, to go back through, find things that happened, and would you say kind of consciously let them go? Is that how they can do that?
There are some forms of healing that say let them go by repeating them a lot. For me, it was a question of reframing. Was there something really wrong with me, or could it have been 1,000 different scenarios that had been different? If that boy in early high school didn't look at me at the beach party that we had and actually walked away from me when I came to him, I believed I was unlovable, unattractive. What if he was gay? What if he had a girlfriend and she was right there? What if he didn't see me? What if it's the what ifs? If you can just not buy into everything, don't believe everything you think.
Yeah, don't attach meaning to situations.
Don't believe everything you think. Don't attach meanings to situations unless you ask and it is confirmed. And then it could be that, the person it's their way of reacting in life. It doesn't have to touch you. It doesn't have to say that you're a bad person. And this is actually what we do in Boldheart Self. We have 16 activators to, looking at the annoyances in your life and getting rid of them. Really looking deep at the shame, setting boundaries, changing your negative self-talk and reframing it, changing your self-image, visioning. We do all of these things. And at the end of the 16 activators, the person is shifted completely on the inside. They show up differently in life. They've gotten rid of toxic relationships. They've replaced it with much more positive self-talk. They're bolder. They're much kinder and more compassionate to themselves. This is the process by which it doesn't, I don't know. I feel like, yes, you can do it in 15 years of therapy, or you can do it really strategically in a very short period of time with other people who are going through it as well. So you don't think that something's wrong with you, and get lasting results, lasting transformation.
Thank you so much for listening to Kitty Talks. Be sure to head over to our kittytalks.com website and become a member of our exclusive club, and you'll get free interviews and access to our private Facebook group, exclusive webinars and secret success interviews. See you there.